descendants to, or Job.
Okay, last week we talked about Israel going into the promised land and conquering it and so on. Well, today we're going to hear about them losing God's blessings. In the introduction, Joshua was a faithful shepherd of God's people. He led Israel with the same care and concern that Moses had. As a person who understood God and treasured his promises, he understood why God gave the Israelites laws and regulations. He knew that only if they kept them would they remain focused on the coming Savior. Near the end of his life, Joshua gathered the Israelites around him and asked if they were willing to bind themselves and their posterity to God's covenant. Today we'll see how this worked itself out for the future. So looking at Joshua chapter 24, first 13 verses here. Then Joshua assembled all the tribes of Israel at Shechem. He summoned the elders, leaders, judges, and officials of Israel, and they presented themselves before the Lord. Joshua said to all the people, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Long ago, your forefathers, including Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, lived beyond the river and worshipped other gods. But I took your father Abraham from the land beyond the river and led him throughout Canaan and gave him many descendants. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. I assigned the hill country of Seir to Esau, but Jacob and his sons went down to Egypt. Then I sent Moses and Aaron, and I afflicted the Egyptians by what I did there, and I brought you out. When I brought your fathers out of Egypt, you came to the sea, and the Egyptians pursued them with chariots and horsemen as far as the Red Sea. But they cried to the Lord for help, and he put darkness between you and the Egyptians. He brought the sea over them and covered them. You saw with your own eyes what I did to the Egyptians. Then you lived in the desert for a long time. I brought you to the land of the Amorites who lived east of the Jordan. They fought against you, but I gave them into your hands. I destroyed them before you, and you took possession of their land. When Balak, son of Zippor, the king of Moab, prepared to fight against Israel, I sent for Balaam, son of Beor, to put a curse on you. But I would not listen to Balaam. So he blessed you again and again. I delivered you out of his hand. Then you crossed the Jordan and came to Jericho. The citizens of Jericho fought against you, as did the Amorites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, Girgashites, and Hivites, and Jebusites, but I gave them into your hands. I sent the hornet ahead of you, which drove them out before you, also the two Amorite kings. You did not do it with your own sword or bow. So I gave you a land on which you did not toil, and cities you did not build. And you live in them and eat from vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant." Okay. Well, number one, taking a quick trip with Joshua through Israel's history. How was God's grace evident in each of the following events? How about the first one? God says, "I took your father Abraham from beyond the river." How's God's grace evidence there?
He kept them that the promises of Savior would be pure, not that it would be by false gods.
Why did he pick Abraham? Pure grace, isn't it? Undeserved love. How about where he says, "I gave Abraham many descendants"? One thing to look at as you go through all these statements, who's doing what?
God is doing
God is. He's doing it all, isn't he? I mean, he's the one who gave the Son. He's the one who gave the promise, who blessed the nation, and so on. Or Jacob and his sons went down to Egypt. What did God do from there? Delivered them, didn't he? First of all, go back, he delivered them from the famine that they were going through. That's why they ended up down in Egypt, and God took care of them while he was down there. Or how about I afflicted the Egyptians by what I did there? I brought your forefathers out of Egypt. What did God do?
It was plagues.
Look at the plagues. crossing the Red Sea, and so on. What did Israel do?
Nothing.
Nothing. God did it all, didn't he? Or the Amorites fought against you, but I gave them into your hands. When they first came upon the Amorites, the Israelites weren't very strong yet. They would have gone by themselves. They would have been defeated very quickly, but God defeated them. Or how about I would not listen to Balaam, so bless you again and again. I delivered you out of his hand. Remember Balaam? In it for the money, wanted it was called by Balak to come and curse them, and 4 times he went out to curse them, and all that came out was blessings. And again, God was behind it. I like his picture here. I sent the hornet ahead of you, which drove them out before you. You did not do it with your own sword or bow. What's a picture of a hornet? How many of you like hornets? You see a swarm of hornets coming at you, what do? I mean, you aren't going to go, oh, come here. No. They're such a little thing, and yet they worry us and scare us, don't they? But of course, God put that fear in them, didn't he? And the last one, I gave you a land in which you did not toil, and cities you did not build. Canaan was a gift of God's grace, wasn't it? You see God's undeserved love all the way through here. Well, number 2 asks, what grand impression was this designed to make on Israel? They would hear all of this. Well, why?
So that they would know that God did everything for them.
Right. That it was the Lord who had showered all these blessings on them. It was all a gift of His grace. Well, number 3, if you were to make a list like this for your life, what would be on it? I was reminded of when I read things online, there's a lot of garbage out there. And typically when somebody posts some article or something, before I read it, the first thing I do is I check to see if that person really did it. I mean, there was a post last week by Tim Allen talking about America and all these other things. Well, I did a little searching. It was written by a Tim Allen, not the Tim Allen that everybody knows. Some guy down in Florida. Some 26-year-old lady wrote an article for some paper. She was sitting in a restaurant, coffee place or whatever, and she noticed on the TV that young politician out in New York, I don't know her name, AOC, that's all I know her as. She said, the younger generation has never known prosperity. Oh. And this lady, 26-year-old, who's part of that younger generation, the millennialist, just looked around. She said, I'm watching the TV, drinking latte coffee. Everybody's on their computer, their tablet, or their phone. And people say they don't know prosperity.
They don't know what it is to be without. So
Do
they
they know
recognize
what it's like to be without? I was talking to somebody just the other day, we were talking about the Great Depression. We went through a depression, they called it a recession back in 2007, 2008 or something. The stock market took a bigger hit in 2007 than it did in 1929. It was a great depression. Did you feel it? We are so richly blessed here. I mean, look, you all have nice pieces of paper with the Bible on it. You all have nice styrofoam cups filled with a variety of different things. You have snacks to eat on. We have a camera filming this. I can hear you because of hearing aids. My Bible won't let me read it. I have a cell phone that tells me when I talk too much. We have so much to do. And what would it be without it?
We wouldn't know what to do without it.
Instead of saying they don't know prosperity, they don't know what it's like to be without. I mean, what college is it? Ripon College out of Wisconsin. I think it's Ripon or is it Carthage? They come up with a list every year. Things that freshmen in college never had. They don't ever remember a time, this is from a list a number of years ago, they don't ever remember a time when TV wasn't flat screen or color. They don't ever remember a car without airbags. I mean, the list of things, I mean, I remember looking at a little TV that was black and white about this big. I was the remote control. And of course, how many channels did we have?
Maybe 4 if you're lucky.
Growing up, we had 3 channels. ABC, CBS, and NBC. That was all we had. Anyway.
I can't remember, but I remember my folks talking about that depression.
I remember them talking about it and saying they were happy if they had an apple to eat that day. How many of you would live on an apple today? For one day, that's all you get. Well, we've got our hostess.
They were good.
Was it?
They're good.
We are so blessed. I'm always amazed when someone from a foreign country goes into Hy-Vee or Cup Foods. Take them down the vegetable aisle. Get all the canned corn. What company? I mean, it's not like there's just one whole kernel of corn. You want the Cub brand? You want this brand, or this brand? Take them down the cereal aisle. Take them down the snack aisle. I remember we were in Wisconsin, and someone in our church took someone before to the local grocery store. And they walked in the door and they had never seen so much food in their life. And you look at what we have in this country, how many gallons of milk does the U.S. dump every year? A lot. How many beans we just leave rotting? Our country has been blessed tremendously. I kind of laughed when gas prices went up this week. Why'd they go up?
They thought it was going to be short.
Because the oil fields in Saudi Arabia got bombed, right? What country in the world produces the most oil?
United States.
United States. Are we really dependent on Saudi Arabia? No. We have so much gas sitting in storage right now.
Yeah, but we kind of like to say that just in case.
Just in case. And you're right. All right, getting way off on a tangent here. Let's look at the next couple of verses 14 and 15. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your forefathers worshipped beyond the river and in Egypt and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. Whether the gods your fathers served beyond the river or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Just a couple of questions. Number 4, after recounting God's goodness, what did Joshua ask the Israelites to do?
Serve the Lord.
Yep.
Serve the Lord, fear him. What did he else tell them to do?
your blessings.
Get rid of your false gods, right?
Yeah.
Well, number 5, what in Joshua's speech betrays a certain level of pessimism about how Israel will react to his plea. And it's kind of interesting. He tells them, get off the fence.
Pick one or the
You
other.
either serve God or you don't. Don't waver. Of course, what's interesting is, what does he tell them to throw away?
The false gods.
Which implies what?
That they
Must
are.
trust
They have them. Well, how about the last one? What is always the response of faith? Joshua's, isn't it? As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. All right, well, the next section, when we get Joshua's strange answer here, starting with verse 16, then the people answered, far be it from us to forsake the Lord to serve other gods. It was the Lord our God himself who brought us and our fathers out of Egypt, from that land of slavery, and performed those good signs before our eyes. He protected us on our entire journey and among the nations through which we traveled. And the Lord drove out before us all the nations, including the Amorites who lived in the land. We too will serve the Lord because he is our God. Joshua said to the people, you are not able to serve the Lord. He is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your rebellion and your sins. If you forsake the Lord and serve foreign gods, he will turn and bring disaster on you and make an end of you after he has been good to you. But the people said to Joshua, no, we will serve the Lord. And Joshua said, you are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen to serve the Lord. Yes, we are witnesses, they replied. Now then, said Joshua, throw away the foreign gods that are among you and yield your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel. And the people said to Joshua, we will serve the Lord our God and obey him. On that day, Joshua made a covenant for the people, and there at Shechem, he drew up for them decrees and laws. And Joshua recorded these things in the book of the law of God. Then he took a large stone and set it up there under the oak near the holy place of the Lord. See, he said to all the people, this stone will be a witness against you. It has heard all the words the Lord has said to us. It will be a witness against you if you are untrue to your God. So, number 7 asks, how do the Israelites respond to God's plea? Oh, we'll do it. The message hit home, didn't it? But then in number 8, you look at verse 19 to 23. Do you find Joshua's response to Israel's confession rather strange?
Not really, because he knows what they did. He was one of them that brought the good report, and the people wouldn't believe him. And how many times that he saw that they said, oh, we'll serve, and then they turned their backs on the Lord.
He knew their track record, didn't he? And actually, Joshua was preaching a little more law here than he is gospel. Well, 9, if you have not already considered Joshua's words in verse 23, do so now. 23 is where he said, I lost my place here. Where he said, throw away your foreign gods that are among you, yield your hearts to the Lord. What light does that shed on everything Joshua said up to this point? The fact that he had to tell the Israelites to get rid of your false gods. Doesn't that add substance to his warning, to his caution here, as he accepted their confession? And 10, how did Joshua show that he had put the best construction on the Lord's people's sincerity?
And with that stone.
Sure. As I read through this, I always think of confirmation. I can't tell you, I have to look back and add up how many people have stood before me and you and said, we will suffer even death rather than fall away from you. And you look at their track record. There have been times I've been like Joshua that they never came to church while they were going to confirmation class. And now they're telling me they're going to be faithful? You put the best construction on it, right? Person tells me they are sorry. I take them at their word. What did Jesus say? Your brother sins against you 7 times. How many times you forgive him? Once?
7 times 7.
7 times 70.
Which means all.
And he's not saying limit it to 490 times. But, I mean, I've had people say they're sorry for so many different things. I've taken them at their word. And didn't Joshua do that? But he also had a warning in there too. All right. Well, let's look at the last section here. This is from the book of Judges. We're jumping ahead a little bit to see what happened. After Joshua had dismissed the Israelites, they went to take possession of the land, each to his own inheritance. The people served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him and who had seen all the great things the Lord had done for Israel. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110, and they buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnath in Heres, in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gaish. After that whole generation had been gathered to their fathers, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord and served the Baals. They forsook the Lord, the God of their fathers, who brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshipped various gods of the peoples around them. They provoked the Lord to anger because they forsook him and served Baal and the Ashtoreths. In his anger against Israel, the Lord handed them over to raiders who plundered them. He sold them to their enemies all around, whom they were no longer able to resist. Whenever Israel went out to fight, the hand of the Lord was against them to defeat them, just as he had sworn to them. They were in great distress. Then the Lord raised up judges who saved them out of the hands of these raiders. Yet they would not listen to their judges, but prostituted themselves to other gods and worshipped them. Unlike their fathers, they quickly turned from the way in which their fathers had walked, the way of obedience to the Lord's commands. Whenever the Lord raised up a judge for them, he was with the judge and saved them out of the hands of all their enemies as long as that judge lived. For the Lord had compassion on them as they groaned under those who oppressed and afflicted them. But when the judge died, the people returned to ways even more corrupt than those of their fathers, following other gods and serving and worshiping them. They refused to give up their evil practices and stubborn ways. Therefore the Lord was very angry with Israel and said, because this nation has violated the covenant I have laid down for their forefathers and has not listened to me, I will no longer drive out before them any of the nations Joshua left when he died. I will use them to test Israel and see whether they will keep the way of the Lord and walk in it as their forefathers did. The Lord had allowed those nations to remain. He did not drive them out at once by giving them into the hands of Joshua. So, if you read through these verses, can you see the pattern for the next couple hundred years? What was the pattern?
Worshiping Baals first.
Okay. They started by worshiping God, then
They fell
they started worshiping Baals. What happened to them?
A judge came.
Well, even before the judge, things went bad for them, right? Raiders came in and everything. They cried out, and God brought a judge. And what happened then?
And they were raised up.
We'll serve the Lord
Back up.
until the judge died.
You know,
Then they were back at the step where let's serve the other gods. Trouble came. They got plundered. They cried out. The Lord sent a judge, delivered them. They said, we will serve the Lord. And the judge died, and it was just a vicious circle, wasn't it? was going on for the next few hundred years. Well, if you look at 1 Corinthians 10, Paul writes, "Now these things occurred as examples to keep us from setting our hearts on evil things as they did. Do not be idolaters as some of them were. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and got up and to indulge in pagan revelry. We should not commit sexual immorality as some of them did, and in one day 23,000 of them died. We should not test the Lord as some of them did and were killed by snakes. And do not grumble as some of them did and were killed by the destroying angel. These things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us on whom the fulfillment of the ages has come. So, if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. No temptation has seized you except what is common to man, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, but when you are tempted, He will also provide a way out so that you can stand up under it." So, how did St. Paul use Israel's history?
That's a warning to us.
It's a warning. Don't imitate. Well, 13. What great warning does Paul hold out in verse 12? And what promises he hold out in 13? 12 is where he says, if you think you're standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. Real easy to get filled with self-righteousness, right? It'll never happen to me, right?
There's the first point.
Yeah. It's like the alcoholic saying, I can go to the bar, it's not going to bother me. I can handle it. Or the teenager saying, I can go to this party, so what if they're doing drugs and drinking? I'm not going to do it. How long does it last?
You know,
If you're
that's very
standing
great.
so firm, watch out. You're going to fall. Or I can, get there this morning. What about the promise in verse 13? First of all, remember, what you're experiencing, other people have, right? It's common to man. Because you live in a sinful world, these things are going to hit you. But of course, what does God say? He's not going to let things come to you that you can't handle. I mean, think about it. If I remember, we had a young couple in Wisconsin that, I forget how many kids, they had 4. And the last one came and was very mentally challenged. I remember the wife saying, why did God give us this? What do you tell her? How can I handle it? Actually, I read this passage to her and I said, if God didn't think you could handle it, He wouldn't have given you this job. But He knew you could. It's, the way I always look at it is, God knows how much you can lift. If He knows you can lift a maximum of 100 pounds, He's not going to give you 110. He's going to not go beyond that. And of course, if He gives you 90 and somebody throws on an extra 20, He's also there to help you, isn't He? And He's going to give you a way out, right? What do people say? When one door closes, God opens up another one. And I wish I could remember. I saw a variation of it this week, which I thought was actually better. It didn't really say when God closes one door, He opens up another. I gotta find it again. It was actually pretty good. Anyway, do you have any questions? In the summary, it says, God had patiently worked with the Israelites through Moses and Joshua. He wanted them to keep His covenant and to serve Him. From the very beginning, Israel refused to accept His grace and follow His covenant. After Joshua's death, the people strayed further than ever. God sent suffering to the Israelites' lives. That always drove them back to Him, but only temporarily. In this lesson, we've reviewed how God blessed his people and how they in turn rejected him. Christians face same danger. Israel's example of unbelief and its consequences warn us against the eternal consequences of rejecting the great salvation we have in Jesus. Well, we'll close with the prayer that we have here. Dear Lord, lead us to treasure your gospel message. May we never lose your blessings through neglect of your word or through self-righteous attitudes. Amen.